I'm not... I think it's going to be the most interesting. The speakers... It's not going to be exactly the same as it's written. I'm starting with our guest. Professor Gao, she's from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, CAS. It's מרכז המחקר של המכללה לפיננסים. כאמור, היא נמצאת באקדמיה הסינית למדעי החברה. And we have something in common. We both studied in English universities. Professor Gao was in Dartmouth University, and I'm from the LSE. She is our Chinese speaker. And with us as well, on the left, Yaffa Ben-Ari. And she's doing in the foreign ministry what I used to do in the past, but she does it much better. She's the head of Economic Affairs Division. And at the end of this year is going to be our ambassador in Japan. Definitely a very key position. And the third speaker is Yoel Navi, the chief economist in the Ministry of Finance. But we invited him actually because I think he's fulfilling one of the most interesting positions I can think of in economy. He's our representative in that bank that we mentioned this morning many times, the Asian Investment Bank, where Israel is side by side with those countries that were mentioned already by Mr. Shichor. Malaysia, Indonesia, countries that do not go to the other side of the street. When they see us, they go to the other side of town. But nevertheless, we're going to sit with them in that bank. Yaffa, why don't you begin? Yaffa? Yes. Well, we're flexible. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, they changed the order between the speakers. They also changed the speakers in this session, but we'll manage because lack of planning is our main trait, and the flexibility, that's Israelis, improvisation. Yaffa. Every plan is a basis for changes. So go ahead. I'll try to be brief and focused. Just a few insights. I preferred not to bring a presentation, but I want to focus on things that I want to talk about. I want to talk in a different point of view, and maybe some of the things were said, but I want to talk about a few main insights. One, our division in the ministry, I don't know if we do it better or more modern, but we do it differently. Our point of view will always remain the same as it was in the days of Oded. How do we leverage the economic capability in order to empower the State of Israel and its diplomatic relations? Because economic doing, like culture, like everything else, that you do in countries. It's actually an empowerment for the presence, to the position, to the impact of a state. So we're doing a setup of objectives for the state. Out of that, we derive a whole set of interests and objectives in economy, but the goal is a part and parcel, not just for diplomacy in the service of the economy, but also economy in the service of diplomacy. One insight is that if that's the way we think, and we actually want to obtain objectives and political interests, at the same time, we also look at the two economies. Two economies, as we said before, they're very different between us and China, and there are advantages and disadvantages, strengths and weaknesses of each of the economy. It's like comparing the elephant with the ant, so to speak. But as an ant, we are quite industrious, and the elephant is not that slow. It's energetic and active, so each side should respect the other. What about the Israeli economy? I'm not going to elaborate because one of the main experts is sitting here, that is Yoel, and I'm sure he is the chief economist in the ministry, will say things even better. But just as an opening point, let me say that in the Israeli economy there are strengths and weaknesses which we have to cope with. The main objectives are nevertheless economy that grows very nicely, and from a percentage point of view it's even better than in China. Of course the proportion is different, but we're talking about an economy which is based on export, an economy that relies on the branding of a startup nation. People to say that it's about time to move from a startup nation to scale-up nation. We have to develop our information here as well, and not just to sell it all the time. And no question, there's a change in the global situation that we're relating to as an export country, and that is the fluctuations in the world economy, the ups and downs in demand and supply of world trade. And that's why the world trade shows decline, and we show good data, but we're impacted. If we look at the Israeli export in the last 3 years, there was a decline from 77 billion in 2015 to 62. Sorry, she said 14 as opposed to 15. There was a decline. In 16, there was a rise of 7 billion, and that is the total Israeli export, including goods and services. Another phenomenon, both in our economy and export and in the world trade, that there is a fluctuation between the scope of trade in commodities to services. And here we have the Israeli edge, that after all we are strengthening in information, transfer of information, technological cooperation, Israeli innovation, creativity. Actually, all this strengthens the sector, not just of the high-tech, but also industry and services. And in services, the percentage of knowledge of high-tech, the know-how, is about 50% of the entire export of services, if we talk about transportation or financial services. So basically, there is a parallel between the Israeli economy and the world one in this change in the package or the proportion between services and commodities. As opposed to that, we have China. China is a superpower that if we would sell it everything it needs, of course we would be very rich. We are not a market for them, but they are for us. But what started in the last 25 years, what started as trade relations today is a bit different. It's a different development. The trade with China, if we look at the data, actually jumped ahead immensely from 50 million 25 years ago. Today we're talking about more than 11 billion, which is very significant. we're talking diamonds and export, and that really represents the Israeli export. We just sell with added value. We sell raw materials that we bought. So when you analyze the export, we take off the diamonds. We always give data without the diamonds, and that reflects the real data of Israeli export. In any case, if we neutralize the diamonds, we see that there's an amazing growth, a duplication of the scope of trade. But within this trade with China, there is a division or distribution of the Israeli export to China much smaller than the import from China. Namely, we buy more than sell to China. And what we buy is a huge package of all sorts of commodities and things for the house. And we start from shoes to cupboards, as opposed to the Israeli export, which is in the general map, it bases on dominant products. And what's happening with China is chemicals, electronic components, and if, God forbid, Intel will shut its plant or stops manufacturing, then immediately there's a decline of 13%. Just to show you what kind of dependency we have on the Israeli export, because it is in three sectors: chemicals, the electronics, and the pharmaceuticals, and that makes our life very, very dangerous. We have to, as an objective, we have to vary our products. And this is against the market in China, which in the last few years shows a huge capability of manufacturing, even overcapacity. They want to make a reform. If we understand their market, they want to actually do a reform such that will transfer the capability of manufacturing to other industries. One of them is renewed energy. These are things they want to develop for themselves, technologies, and we have again another topic, that we cannot focus only on the trade relations with a state like China. We have to learn China all the time, learn it better in order to understand where are the interests interface, where are our strengths, where do they tally with the needs of the other side. I talk about it as a meeting of capabilities and needs. In such a meeting, there's no question. In such a meeting, there's no question that there are advantages, and the technological capabilities of Israel and development are there, and we see in the last decade, I started knowing China in 2008, but then there was the first meeting of the technological capabilities in let's cooperate in the R&D for the industry. So it's this and Chinese interest is there for quite some time in the Israeli technologies. I was happy to hear Oded talk about phobia. I'm together with you. I think that this phobia is superfluous. When we talk about two economies, we have to have due diligence of exactly what are the advantages and disadvantages, risks and opportunities, and we have to do it with every economy that we, of course, you always have to testing before you go into the neutral bed. But no question that in spite of the risks, there are huge advantages in development of capability of the Israeli manufacturing, then disseminating Israeli know-how, the export. The Israeli economy has an interest not just to preserve its capability of innovation. Today we are first, side by side with Korea in investment in R&D. 4.2 something. There's no question that you cannot just sit and rest on our laurels. We have to continue to develop these capabilities. Cooperation in the technological developments and R&D it's not that we know everything and all the wisdom is here. On the contrary, also the needs of developing countries can perhaps give some incentive to Israeli manufacturing in countries that are developing. Our objective to preserve our place as a state that develops innovation and renews itself all the time is to get some incentives from outside to cooperate with another brain, with another innovation, even if we as an ecosystem of innovation are the inspiration to many countries. Many countries and leaders of other countries, they come to Israel in order to learn from Israeli innovation. It's not just China, even small countries like Greece or even the United States. So small and big countries, innovative and development, or even not developed, come to learn from the Israeli experience. And apart from the national pride, I think there's an interest in this cooperation to empower the capability in Israel and to keep its place as a leader and a hub of innovation. You don't have to be afraid of the Chinese. I think the Chinese are incentivizing us to reach higher peaks and to obtain much bigger ambitions. And if we deal with ambitions, I'm not going to repeat what was said before regarding the relationship between Israel and China in the last 25 years and all the visits and the Prime Minister's visit, etc. in China. At least in the last 2 times I was there in 2013 and 2017. The definition of Israel by China in March 2017 is comprehensive innovation partner shows the importance that China sees in this cooperation. Beyond that, there's of course the initiative of the Silk Road, the One Belt, One or BRI or whatever it's called. I had the pleasure to participate in that summit where the president launched his initiative, and he made a stock making in 2013 that this project is not just a slogan. It's really an ambitious strategy for global economical foreign policy, and the amazing connection with people who deal with it. If you read his speech, it's absolutely amazing to see this personality giving this speech to develop according to highlights. He didn't read from the papers. He didn't bring a presentation. He just spoke. And you can see that the man really believes wholeheartedly in his vision. This vision focuses it's not just his personality, but you have to understand the significance of this initiative of the Silk Road. It's not just economic, it's not imperialistic. I don't think so. I think we have to get rid of our old perceptions. We're not talking about colonialism here. We have to be innovative in our thoughts and not to go with patterns or molds of the past. We have to think differently. And I think, not necessarily because Oded, that the Americans are pressuring us. I think that it's not because we're afraid of others, but it's our own thoughts. The Chinese want to make reform. They want to deploy themselves in the world, and I'm not going to analyze the entire Chinese economy. I just want to conclude by saying that there are 2 main insights. The Silk Road is an opportunity not just to the countries around China. The Silk Road is an opportunity for the State of Israel to be a partner, not just in regular projects, but to show the capability that we have in various developments, not just roads and ports, but also agriculture, water, food, renewable energy, health, education. The Silk Road talks not just about prosperity and economics. It's not just maintaining peace and stability. I heard that in China, the most important thing is to cope with a mass of people and pressures and movement of people. This is a mass that can put any leadership into pressure and hysterics and panics. That's why they're more concerned about growth than they are with stability. He spoke about security and stability. Second, he said prosperity and development. So it's not just economics. We're talking here about producing openness, connectivity with the world, to produce stability between what's happening in the huge country and what's happening in the world, and to create a stability of development in order to cope with various needs and to reduce the drama and the fear vis-à-vis the distresses or these interests of the Silk Road. Israel has golden opportunity to connect, not just what we need, but also in their needs, not just in the Middle East, where we are actually members in the real Silk Road, not just in Africa, that China has a lot of interests in Africa, and we have a lot of experience in development in Africa, but also in Europe. And that's what China wants. They want to go through the Middle East to Europe, but also in Euro-Asia, where Israel has wonderful connections with a few countries on the Silk Road, beginning with Kazakhstan or even Southeast Asia. The Israeli capabilities are known and we can cooperate. So people said projects. Projects, yes, projects as well. When we were the leaders, about, apparently you're not planning to listen to the bell. No, I have hearing problems, she says. No question that joining the AIB in the first stages wasn't accidental, but it was definitely taking advantage of an opportunity. Although the Chinese didn't approach us, we approached them. It was important. I don't think that the AIB will be stronger than the World Bank. This is already a bit going too far, but the entire policy of the Development Bank has great interest that the Israeli economy will connect to projects of all the development projects, not just in the periphery in China, but also in the mainland. Thank you very much.